lazy bones of mine, they're not perfect but they're fine. I lay around and watch 9-9 and just sit about. Cause it's got up and it's gone. I've been in this house too long. I've lost my sense of right and wrong, and I'm freaking out. Cause there's so much to do and there's so little time, when all I wanna do is waste my time, and all I wanna do is wait to climb it back.
Hey everyone, Adam here from Adam Fiasco Productions. Hope you're having a great day. In this video, I'm going to be taking you on a journey where we deep dive into one aspect of a full production and discuss all of the stages from recording through to the final finished mix that are needed to get a polished radio-ready sound. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the vocals. In most modern pop, rock and country songs, the vocals are the main event. They're at the forefront of the mix, and they're usually what the listeners hear first and pay most attention to. So it's important that they sound absolutely killer. They deliver the message of your song to your audience in a way that grabs hold of them and keeps their attention. This track is an alt-rock style song from Conflare, who are a band here in the UK, and it's called Lazy Bones. These guys have been putting out incredible music for a couple of years, and I've been lucky to join them on that journey. This is a track that they released as their last single in 2019. And it almost instantly got thousands of streams on Spotify. It got picked up by BBC Radio Leeds, which is a major mainstream radio station in their local area. And they also got featured in Rock Band magazine, where they were labelled as one of the top 8 bands to see this year, with an impressive review for this Lazy Bones track too. So, without further delay, let's dive in. Now, obviously, the first stage of the process is recording, and the main aim here is to capture a great performance. Now, Toby, the lead singer, has a really great voice, and it's quite unique. When you hear Conflare, that's one of the first things that you notice, is that his voice is quite unique. Now, we tried a few different microphones throughout the years with Toby, but when we did this particular session, I had a microphone on loan, and it was a Warm Audio 251. And so we put that one up, and we thought we'd give it a try. In the past, I've used Neumann U87s. I've also got a U47 as well, which is my personal favourite for Toby's vocal. But as soon as I had this mic, I thought we'd throw it up and we'd have a go. And instantly, it just blew my mind. It sounded so good. And this is a relatively inexpensive microphone. The Warm Audio line is nothing short of amazing, but this microphone in particular really, really impressed me. I think it's somewhere around sort of 700 to 800 mark. What I liked about it more than the U47 is that it had a more open top end. The U47 is notoriously quite dark. The 251 was also a little bit softer in the mids, whereas the U47 is a little bit more kind of open and a little bit more sharper in the mids. And the 251 also had a really nice sort of warmth to the low end, which, again, that's something that the 47 does really well. So I thought this microphone complemented Toby's voice excellently, and so that's the one that we ended up using. So then we ran that into a Neve 1073 preamp, which, again, sounds absolutely great. And then we did track with a little bit of compression on the way in. We ran Toby's vocal through a Teletronics LA2A. Now, the compression on the way in is just for flavour more than anything. The compressor wasn't doing an awful lot, probably around 2 to 3 decibels of gain reduction on the loudest part. So it was just keeping his level in check nicely, but nothing too much. We didn't want to create a sound that was too pumping at this stage. We wanted it to sound natural. So let's have a listen to a section of just the raw recorded vocal. So this is absolutely no effects on it, no plugins. All the plugins are disabled down the side here. This is just the raw vocal that we recorded through the mic, preamp and compressor.
Oh, these lazy bones of mine, they're not perfect but they're fine. I lay around and watch 9-9 and just sit about. Cause it's got up and it's gone. I've been in this house too long. I've lost my sense of right and wrong, and I'm freaking out.
Okay, so that's a really, really nice, clean recording. We're obviously in a room that's very well treated, so there's no room ambience. Toby was quite close up on the mic, probably somewhere between 6 to 12 inch away from the mic, and we had the mic upside down, angled slightly down, sort of just below his mouth, and I find that helps with excessive sibilance. Certain singers are more prone to sibilance on the S's. And a really good way of doing that is just to angle the mic slightly off axis. That's what we did for the recording. Now, obviously, the beauty of recording in the studio is that we can split the sections. So Toby gave me a couple of takes of the intro. He then gave me a couple of takes of the verse, and then obviously the choruses. And that's how we built the song up, and we got the takes of the vocals. Now, once we had a lead vocal that we were really happy with, that was comped together, we went for some doubles. Now, I like to track at least 2 doubles. So that means that we've got a minimum of 3 lead vocals. Now, for the verses, I just have 1 double that's panned center, and that's this one here. And for the choruses, I have 2 doubles, 1 panned left and right, and that's what we've got here. That's the left channel, and that's the right channel. They just comp down to a stereo track. Now, once those have all been recorded, it's really important for this kind of music and the sound that we was going for. We wanted the editing to be really, really tight. Now, the lead vocal sounded pretty great as it was. There was a little bit of tuning, just fixing any slight pitch issues there. However, then the double vocals, so the double vocal mono, the one that's straight up the middle, and the other doubles that are left and right, they had to be tuned and quantized, so time aligned, to be as tight to the original lead as possible. Now, if I just play these sections for you, so this is the verse, and then it's going to go into the chorus. So notice how the vocal opens up on the chorus, where we go from 2 lead vocals that are down the centre, to then 3 lead vocals, one of which is in the centre, and then the other 2 which are panned left and right. Let's have a listen to that.
Walking me, I'm done, I wanna disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones. Aren't you sick of being all alone? I think it's time that you did.
So what you can hear from there is how the vocal really opens out when we get to the chorus. It goes from being really tight and focused in the middle to sounding really, really wide. And that's why I record the doubles and arrange them in that way. It makes the vocals sound wider. It gives a nice lift when we get to the chorus. So once the lead vocals were all down, we've got them tuned so they sound great. We've got them tightly time aligned. We then had a section where there was a scream. So this went in with the across the lead vocal. Now for the scream, we recorded 2 of them, and again I panned them left and right. So I'll just play you that little section. I'll put the lead vocal in as well, just so you can hear a little bit of context.
Much to do and so little time, when all I wanna do is waste my time, and all I wanna do is wait to climb in bed. Yeah!
Okay, so the scream's in there as well. We tracked that as the very, very last thing, so I don't think Toby was up to too much singing after he'd done those screams. So at that point, we've got all the lead vocals in. We're happy where they are. Now, at that point is when we started to look at some harmonies. Rob is the guitarist in Conflare. He does all the backing vocals and the harmonies. And for this song, it's quite sort of straight-edged alt-rock. So we didn't spend loads of time layering tons and tons of vocals, because that really wasn't the style that we were going for. It's much more sort of guitar and drum focused rather than big pop vocal stacks. But nevertheless, it's still important that the vocals sound absolutely killer. When we recorded the harmonies, I got Rob to sing them twice, and then I ended up using 2 of them panned left and right, which is what you can see here. So those have just been bounced down to a single stereo track. The reason for that, again, is just to create width in the vocals and just to make it sound big. Sometimes in this kind of music, I might just record one harmony and put it up the center for the verses, and then maybe record two panned left and right for the choruses. It depends, but for this one, I felt like doing two left and right all the way through, just to create that extra size. So the approach that we use for the harmonies is to harmonize certain words. We harmonized quite a lot of the chorus, but then we also threw some harmonies in the verse, just on certain words and certain phrases. And the aim here was just to make certain words and certain phrases just stick out and kind of emphasize them a little bit more so that they get stuck in the listener's head. So let's take a listen to the first verse. I'll put the lead vocals in, and now we've also got Rob's harmonies in as well. The recording chain was exactly the same. We used the Warm Audio 251 into a Neve 1073 into a Teletronics LA2A. So let's have a listen to this. Everything again totally raw. Rob's harmonies were also tuned to be tightly in tune harmony-wise with the lead vocal, and also time-wise. I didn't go crazy with the timing, but we did a little bit of subtle editing just to make the timing work. So let's take a listen.
Or a run, stick a fork in me, I'm done, I wanna disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones. Aren't you sick of being all alone? I think it's time that you did something. But for now, I'm happy with nothing. I was born in the right generation. I don't need a job when I've got a PlayStation. Eat and sleep and then repeat. I'd rather lie on my back than my own 2 feet.
So what you can hear there is certain words and certain phrases are just going to end up jumping out a little bit more than others, and it's just choosing those key moments that you want to emphasize. Now we also had a breakdown, which is just where the scream comes in, which has got some really interesting key changes, and we put quite a nice harmony over that. So I'll just play you that so you can hear it. It really gives this track a sort of more intense feel to it.
And I knew it. 'Cause there's so much to do and there's so little time, when all I wanna do is waste my time, and all I wanna do is wait to climb in bed.
So once we've put all of the harmonies in, that was pretty much it. There were some backing vocals down here. These were just kind of like gang backing vocals, which I'll come to those a little bit later in the mix. They're quite unique in the way that we treated these in the mix, so I'll leave those till a little bit later. So the main thing was capturing a great performance for the lead vocals, getting some really, really nice tight harmonies in, and then making sure that the doubles and the harmonies were tuned to be really, really tight, and also timed to be tight to the lead vocal. Okay, so now all of the vocals are recorded, they're tuned and timed exactly how I want them, and in the raw form they're sounding great. It's time to move on to the mix. Now, at this point, I will export all of the tracks that I've got and import them into a brand new session in order to mix. Now, there's lots of conflicting advice about mixing, particularly on the internet. And some people will say to start with the vocals, others say finish with the vocals, and there's various reasons for that. The answer is really just finding a process that works for you. The problem I find when you leave the vocals till the end of the mix is you can find yourself doing a lot of over-processing in order to make them fit in the track. And that can make them sound weird and unnatural. So my process looks like this. I'll generally start the mix and get a rough static fader balance going. So no EQ, no compression. I'm just moving faders and just generally getting just a nice balance across everything, across all of the different elements. Once I've done that, I'll move on to the vocals as the first thing that I address, and I'll get them about 80% of where I want them to be. So EQ, compression, whatever it is that they need. Once I've done that, I'll then go back and mix all of the other elements of the track. So drums, then bass, guitars, keys if they've got it, and so on. Now, because I've already got the vocals in place pretty much, the rest of the track starts to build and form around the vocals. Then all I have to do at the end is just go back and tweak them a little bit. And I find that process just works better for me. The vocals stay sounding natural. I'm not saying I don't do quite drastic processing on the vocals. Sometimes I do, and sometimes that's what's needed. But I find doing it this way just ends up sounding a little bit more natural. And I would rather kind of the track form around the vocals than have to force the vocals to fit into a track at the end. That's just my take on the process. But like I said, it's finding something that works for you. So let's dive in and have a look at some of the processing that we're doing. So up to now we've heard the vocals and not much else. So what I'd like to do is just play the vocals just in the track. So the raw vocals, nothing on them, but just in the track, so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on. Okay, I'll just play a section. I might move it onto the chorus as well.
Stay in bed till I press one. I'm not going for a run. Stick a fork in me, I'm done. I wanna disappear. But nothing's impossible, they say. But I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away, and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bone. I get sick of being all alone. I think.
So the vocals sound okay, but they are a bit dark, and that's not going to work for this track. There's also a bit of build up in the lower mids that needs clearing up. They were compressed on the way in, but they're still far too dynamic to work in the track. You know, as you can hear, certain words, certain phrases are really kind of poking out up top, and then other words are just getting buried and you can't really hear them. So we need to address that, and we need to add some compression to reduce the dynamics. And also we can use the compression to impart some energy. So this is a high energy rock song. We want the vocals to get across that energy. So let's dive in and let's start having a look at what's going on the lead vocal. So the first thing I've got in the chain is an EQ. This is the FabFilter Pro Q3, and all I'm doing here is just taking out some annoying resonances. Now, in any vocal, you're going to get resonances either to do with the room, the microphone that you're recording in, or sometimes even the vocal cords of the singer. Everyone has whistle tones and resonances in the voice, and they always kind of show themselves differently for different singers. So this is generally the first thing that I do. Get an EQ, boost, so do a boost, and then get a really, really tight Q. Put the gain all the way top, and then I will play the vocal and sweep, and then just find anything that sounds offensive that I just really don't like the look of. All I will do then, once I've found it, is just notch it out. Just reduce it. Okay, so get rid of that one because that was just me showing you. So that's all I've done here. So there was a really, really annoying frequency around this frequency here, which is 2.7. There was also a little bit of build-up going on, as I said, in the mids, around 460. So I've just notched that out a little bit too. So that's just cleaned the vocal up a little bit for us to then move on to the next stage of processing. So the next stage is then going into this these EQs. Now this is the Slate Virtual Mix Rack. I'm a huge fan of Slate plugins. They're insanely cheap. It's almost a no-brainer if you do any sort of production or mixing to not have the Slate Digital All Access Pass. And I rely on it quite heavily for my mixing. So the first thing I'm going into here is a virtual channel. This is emulating a channel of a SSL console. It's not doing an awful lot. It's just adding some very, very subtle saturation. I'm then going into an SSL EQ, which is where the bulk of the EQ is happening, to be honest. So the first thing, let's look at the top end. So we said the vocal was sounding quite dark. So we've got our EQ set to around 6.8K, and we've got a nice boost there, 7 decibels of boost, okay? And this is like a high shelf, so it's boosting everything above that frequency. I've then got a little bit more in the upper mids, so around 3K, just some nice presence and nice bite. And then I've got a bell boost right down at the bottom, around 100 hertz. Again, around 5 to 6 decibels of boost down there. So this is almost like creating a smiley EQ curve, but I really like the characteristics of this EQ. I think when you boost it, you get some really nice saturation and get some nice character on the vocal. I've then got a high pass filter. It's just filtering up to about 50 hertz. And then the final thing, I'm just adding this final EQ, which is called lift. This is basically just a high shelf and a low shelf, and I'm adding some more lows. So about another 3 to 4 dB of lows into that. Now, after the EQ, I'm then compressing. Now, this is an external effect. So this is routed to some hardware compressors, which I'll show you now. So the lead vocal is going through these two compressors. It's going through the 1176 Blue Stripe first, which is this one on the bottom, and then it's going into the LA2A, which is the one on the top. Now these are two totally different compressors. The Blue Stripe 1176 is very aggressive, and it's got a ton of saturation in the mids, which I really like. It really helps vocals to cut through. Then it's going into the LA2A, which is much smoother. So sometimes the 1176 on its own can be a little bit too much, a bit too pumpy. So then we're going into the LA2A just for some smoothing off. Now, the 1176 is doing the most of the compression, okay? The needle is going to be moving to about the -10 mark. So we're taking about 10 decibels of gain off of that. We're then going into the LA2A, which is doing somewhere around 3 to 5 on the loudest, just smoothing it out. So let's take a listen to the vocal now with all of this in.
Stay in bed till half past one. I'm not going for a run. Stick a fork in me, I'm done, I wanna disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones. Are you sick of being all alone? I think it's time that you did something.
So instantly we can hear the vocal sounds much brighter. It's got less sort of mud in the mids and the lower mids, and the compressor is giving it a ton of energy and also keeping the level in check. So I'm just going to play the same section and I'm going to A/B it. So when I click this button here and it goes yellow, that's everything disabled, and then I'll keep flicking it on and off so you can hear the difference. Okay, we'll start with it on.
Stay in bed till half past one. I'm not going for a run. Stick a fork in me, I'm done, I wanna disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones. Are you sick of being all alone? I think it's time that you...
Now, that's a pretty dramatic difference to my ears. It goes from sounding quite dark and dull and just kind of flat and two-dimensional to sounding really upfront, much more depth and a ton more energy. Now, because of that compression, quite heavy compression, we are getting a little bit of sibilance. So the final thing that I'm adding is just a simple de-esser, which is just taking off some of those S's. Okay, so play that in. You can have a listen.
Hey there, lazy bones. Are you sick of being all alone?
So that just takes some of the sizzle off of the S's, and now that is in a much better place. Now, moving on to the double vocal. The double vocal that's the mono vocal, I really wanted this to sound quite unique, and I wanted it to add even more brightness and saturation to the lead, which I then blend in as necessary. So let's have a look at what's happening to the double vocal. If you remember, this is just an exact copy of the lead.
These lazy bones of mine, they're not perfect, but they're fine.
So again, pretty dark, pretty flat, pretty boring, to be honest. So there's a ton of processing going on here. So the first thing I've got is this API EQ. I've got a load of low end, 100 hertz, about 6 decibels. I've then got some mids, 1.5K, again at about 6 decibels. Sorry, that was 6 as well, down at 100, not 8. And then I've got a 5K high shelf at 9 decibels. So huge amount of EQ there. I'm then going into this unit here, which is a preamp emulation, and this has been driven quite hard to get some saturation. I want to drive this into distortion, so it's set on the preamp, it's set to push, and then I've dialed it in to get a nice amount of saturation. Now after that, I'm dialing in even more mid and high end, so I've got a 20k boost all the way up. This adds some unbelievable air to the vocal, as you'll hear shortly. And then I've also got another boost at 5k, so another 9 decibels at 5k. We're then going into a couple of compressors. Now these compressors basically emulate the hardware that I've just shown you on the lead vocal. So we've got a Blue Stripe 1176. Again, it's going to be quite aggressive, doing a lot of compression. And then this unit is much more slow and smoother. Which it's not an LA2A emulation, but it's a very similar style compressor. So now let's have a listen to what all of this processing sounds like on the double vocal.
These lazy bones of mine, they're not perfect, but they're fine. I'll lay you around and watch 9/9 and just sit about.
So, super aggressive, super thin, super distorted, and you're probably thinking, Adam, you've ruined it. But actually, the aim of this is to blend it in with the lead vocal. Okay, this isn't the vocal that people are going to hear. This is just adding some extra sauce that was missing to the lead vocal, even after we've treated it. So let's put the lead vocal in now, and let's have a listen to what those sound like together.
Oh, these lazy bones of mine, they're not perfect, but they're fine. I'll lay you around and watch 9/9 and just sit about.
Without the double.
'Cause it's got up and it's gone. I've been in this house too long. I've lost my sense of right and wrong, and I'm freaking out.
Double back in.
And you say, hey there, lazy bones.
So can you hear the difference there? So again, it's blended in quite subtly. We don't need a lot. If you look at the faders, the double vocal is quite significantly lower than the lead, but it's just adding some extra air, some extra grit and extra aggressiveness, which sounds really, really nice. So then the only thing I've got then on the double vocal is, again, a de-esser, just to take off some of the sizzle from those S's. Just before we move on to anything else, just a quick tip about EQ and compressing. Again, there's lots of conflicting advice on this about whether you should EQ before your compressor or EQ after. And again, there's no rules. It just depends what works for you. Where vocals are concerned, most of the time, probably 70-80% of the time, I will EQ first and then compress last. And there's a couple of reasons for that. When you compress after the EQ, you can be more aggressive with the EQ that you add without it sounding harsh or pokey or anything like that. The reason for that is because the compressor is then going to hammer down on the EQ track and just keep everything tight and keep everything glued together. Another reason that I EQ first is because I can add more top end by EQing first and then compressing afterwards. If you EQ a lot of top end after the compressor, that's when you tend to run into sibilance issues and end up having to use a ton of de-essers, which can sound weird and unnatural. You start getting distortion, you start getting a singer that sounds like he's got a lisp, which again is no good. So again, you can boost a ton of top end on an EQ put that into a compressor, and that top end is what the compressor is going to kind of hit first. So the compressor almost does some of the de-essing for you. So then afterwards, you might just need a de-esser, just taking a very, very slight amount off, just 2 or 3 dB. Again, I would encourage you to experiment and see what works for you, but that is the process that generally works for me. So then moving on to the double vocals in the chorus, these are treated pretty similarly to the lead vocal. So I've got a nice chunk of top end, 7-8 dB at around 7.5K. Got a little bit more mids around 4K and some lows around sort of like 100-ish. I've put the high pass filter a little bit higher up on this because I don't want too much low end from coming through these doubles because they're in the side. I want to cut out a little bit more of those lows. I've then got this EQ here. Again, this is just a high shelf and a low shelf, a nice big chunk of lows, but that's coming after this high pass filter here. So it gives some nice thickness, but without it sounding too boomy. Then got a little touch of top end, and then we're going into some compressors. Again, these are fairly similar to the compressors I've got on the lead vocal. This is an 1176. It's not the Blue Stripe. This is a more modern version. And then into a distressor, but the distressor's on the opto setting, which emulates an LA2A. And the distressor was a compressor that was designed to emulate some of these vintage compressors like your 1176s and LA2A. So I've got that on opto mode. Let's have a listen to the double vocal. Remember, these are stereo. We've got a left and a right one.
There's something, but for now I'm happy with nothing. I was born in the right generation. I don't need a job when I've got a PlayStation. Eat and sleep and then repeat. I'd rather lie on my back than my own 2 feet.
So, nice and aggressive. They sound really, really good. Let's put all of this together. So we've got the lead vocal, the main one. We've got the double mono vocal, which is the super distorted, aggressive one blended in the verses. And then we've got the double vocal coming in the chorus. Let's take a listen to a short section with all of those in.
Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones. Are you sick of being all alone?
Skip forward to the bridge section.
I was born in the right generation. I don't need a job when...
Really, really nice and bright. There's absolutely no muddiness or anything undesirable about them, and they've got loads of energy from the compression. And not only does the compressor give them energy, it also sorts the dynamics out, so there's no bits that are poking out more than any others. So then all that's left now is the screams and the harmonies. So Toby's screams, let's just remind ourselves of what those sounded like.
Wait to climb it back! Yeah!
Okay, so they sound okay, but again, we need quite a lot of brightness, and I want to add some extra distortion to them, just to sound a little bit more screamy, if you like. So again, we've got our virtual channel going into an SSL compressor. Again, a massive amount of high end, so 10 dB of top end, 7.5K. More mids, 4.7K, around 5 to 6 dB, and then some lows as well. That's then going into this high shelf EQ and a low shelf as well. So it's got a little bit of highs, but a big chunk of lows. It's then going into an 1176 compressor, which sounds really, really aggressive. And then it's going into this unit on the end, which is emulating another preamp, which is pushed hard, and I've got this dialed right the way up, so the saturation is dialed all the way up. That's going to add some really, really nice saturation and quite noticeable distortion. So now that's all in, let's take a listen. The final thing is just a de-esser, just to take off some of the sizzle from the S's. So let's take a listen.
To climb it back! Yeah!
Really, really aggressive there. Let's just have a listen again without, and then again with.
Wait to climb it back! Yeah!
And with.
Climb it back! Yeah!
So in the mix, that's going to sound really, really aggressive. That distortion sounds so smooth and just adds so much energy to it. So then finally, we've just got these harmonies. Rob's harmonies. Let's just remind ourselves what some of those sounded like.
Keep being all alone. Time that you did something. Now I'm happy with nothing.
Okay, so Rob's vocals are treated very similarly to the lead. So we've got some high EQ here. So about 7.5K, again around 5 decibels. We've got some upper mids around 4K, 4-5 decibels, and some lows as well, 100 hertz, around 5 decibels. We've got a high pass filter, it's taking off some of that super low end rumble into another one of my favourite EQs. I use this everywhere, high lift and low lift, adding a touch of highs and some lows as well. That's then going into this distressor plugin. The distressor plugin is set on Opto, so this again is emulating the LA2A. It's a very, very smooth compression. After that, we've got the de-esser, just taking a little bit of gain off the S's. So let's have a listen to what those sound like now.
Sick of being all alone. Time that you did something. Now I'm happy with nothing.
So again, as you can see, not shy about how much compression we're adding, hitting 10 dB or even more in some places. And that, again, is really important because we don't want certain aspects to jump out of this. We want the harmonies to be really, really locked down and then tight with the lead vocal. So let's just listen to the vocals all together now, and then we'll listen to them in the mix.
Disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones. Aren't you sick of being all alone? I think it's time that you did something.
So they sound really, really tight and they're gelling together really well. So let's have a listen to those in the track now and see how much better they're sounding. Remember before, they were kind of getting a little bit lost. They were way too dark and they were far too dynamic. Certain words were poking out, certain words were just getting buried, and it just wasn't really gelling. Let's take a listen now.
I wanna disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones. Aren't you sick of being all alone? I think it's time that you did something, but for now I'm happy with nothing.
So they sound way, way better. Maybe the lead vocal could come up a touch, but that's literally all it's going to be now. It's just a case of just balancing the vocals together. Happy with how the harmonies are sounding. I know Conflare, from working with them many times before, they don't like the harmonies too up front. First time round, I might have mixed those harmonies from Rob just a touch higher, and some people might be thinking that they should be a touch higher, and that's fine. For this kind of song and for the way that Conflare like their music to sound, the harmonies are very, very subtle. The final thing I'll just want to point your attention is these BVs. They're kind of weird. We were in two minds whether to use them or not. Because the song's called Lazy Bones, it's these BVs are kind of like some childish chants. But they kind of work. They sound pretty cool, and we did some cool processing to them. One thing we did was change the formant on them. So we all kind of gathered around the microphone and did the chants, recorded them as a group, number of times to get the real sort of gang sound. We then shifted the formant a little bit to make it sound more childish. This in the extreme setting is what gives you the chipmunk sound, but we didn't go anywhere near that. We just maybe added something like 5 to 10% of it just to make it sound a bit more childish. I've then got some EQ and compression. So this is a Neve EQ. It's much harsher than the SSL EQ. Adding some top and adding some mids as well, around 3K. And then some compression as well. Let's just take a listen to those. So sound really, really weird, but in the track, it sounds pretty cool. Let's just play it and take a listen to where they come in here.
But for now, I'm happy with nothing. I was born in the right generation. Don't need a job when I've got a PlayStation. Eating, sleeping, down repeat. I'd rather lie on my back with my own TV.
So you can hear them really, really subtly, and they just add that extra nice, that extra nice texture, if you like. Okay, so now we have the vocals sitting nicely in the track in terms of EQ and compression. It's time to add some extra sauce in terms of FX. At the moment, these vocals are completely dry, and there's still some extra juice we can get out of them. Now, all of the vocals are going to various effects units, and I'll talk you through those now. So the first thing I've got them all going into is this slap delay. Now, a slap delay is a really, really quick delay, and this is the timings that I'm using. Now, this is based from the old tape slap that you used to get when recording to tape. That was somewhere around sort of like 165 milliseconds, and it's a classic effect used by engineers like CLA. I think he quotes that he uses around 165, 166 for his tape slap. However, what I prefer to do is take that number and then split the difference between the left and the right channels to create a stereo slap delay. So I'll drop the left channel down to 160 and the right channel up to 170. And what that does is it creates a nice stereo slap. Let's take a listen to a short section of just the lead vocal so you can hear that slap delay.
Stay in bed till half past one. I'm not going for a run. Stick of the fork in me, I'm done, I wanna disappear.
So it's super subtle, but it's just there, and it's just helping to give the vocal some extra depth. We're starting to make things more 3D sounding now. Now, after the slap delay, I'm then going into a longer delay. Okay, this one is around an 1/8 note. And again, what I've done is split the difference. So rather than just having a mono 1/8 note delay, I've split that across left and right, giving a 10-second delay on each side. 10 millisecond delay on each side, so that it creates a nice stereo sound. So again, let's just take a listen to that one in.
You're sick of being all alone. I think it's time that you did something. But for now, I'm happy with nothing.
So again, that's just creating even more sense of space and more depth as well. Now, the final thing that the vocals are going into is a reverb. Okay, these effects are for other instruments, which I'll do in another video, but this one down here is the vocal reverb. Now, the reverb that I'm using is a Lexicon plate. So it's an A plate. It's got a long decay on it, so a 2-second reverb time. However, a trick that I like to use with reverb, particularly with long decays, because this can make your vocals sound really, really nice and a big sense of space, but you can also completely bury them and turn them to mush and make them sound like you're listening to it underwater. So a way to get around that is by using a long pre-delay. So the pre-delay is the delay between the dry signal and when the reverb comes in. And I've got that set to around 150 milliseconds. So that helps to separate the vocal from the reverb. So we get all of the benefits of a big, lush reverb, a huge ambience, without its kind of losing its intimacy and without the vocal getting pushed back in the mix. It still sounds super up front. Now, before it goes into the reverb, I am doing some processing. So this is processing the actual reverb sound itself. I'm taking some highs off it. There's nothing worse than when a singer sings an S sound and you get the S kind of echoing in the reverb. So that's taking away some of that. And then boosting a little bit of low mids, so around 300 hertz. And then taking a big chunk of lows out, so around 70. Because again, we don't want the reverb to sound really muddy and boomy. So that's what this EQ is doing. I'm then going into this unit, which is unique to Slate Digital, and it is really something special. It's an EQ, but also a transient designer. And there are 3 settings. There's present, fat, and tight. And I've got mine set to fat, and it pretty much does exactly what it says on the tin. It makes things sound really, really fat, but without sounding boomy. I've got the drive set really, really high, which is going to exaggerate the sustain more than the transient. And I've got the intensity all the way to 100%. So we're hearing 100% of this affected signal. So now let's put the reverb in with the delays. Let's just take a listen to a short section.
Stay in bed till half past 1. I'm not going for a run. Stick a fork in me, I'm done, I wanna disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say, but I do nothing every day. My disposition's far away and I'm over here. Hey, you say, hey there, lazy bones.
So that now sounds really, really great. We've got all the depth and ambience that we want from the reverb. We've got the 3D-ness coming from the delays. And it just sounds great. So let's put that into the mix and let's just have a listen to where we're at now. Obviously, these effects have been kind of blended into taste. It's up to you how much you want. You might choose to have more reverb or less, or same with the delays. This is where I felt it was sitting really nicely for this track. So let's take a listen.
I get sick of being all alone. I think it's time that you did something, but for now I'm happy with nothing. I was born in the right generation. Don't need a job when I've got a PlayStation. Eating, sleeping, then repeat. I'd rather lie on my...
So that's sounding really nice, and if anything, the reverbs and the delays just help to push the vocal that slightly more in front of the mix. One thing we haven't listened to is that scream. Let's fast forward to that and just listen to how that was sitting in the mix. Remember all of the distortion that we added to that. So let's take a listen to how that sounds.
And so little time when all I wanna do is waste my time, and all I wanna do is wait to climb it back.
And just for comparison, let's just take off that processing that we did on the screen. Remember, we did a huge boost here. We added a ton of top end and a ton of distortion. Let's just take that off and listen to the scream without it.
My time, and all I wanna do is wait to climb it back.
So it sounds super weak and just has absolutely no impact at all. But with all that extra distortion, with all the extra compression, it sounds epic. Tons of energy, and because we recorded 2 of them and got the left and right, it creates a big sense of space as well and adds some really, really nice width. So there you have it. That is how I approached the vocals for this particular song, right through from the recording to the production and editing, right through to the final finished mix. I hope it's been really useful and valuable, and that you've been able to take away some golden nuggets of information to apply to your own music. If you have any music that you've been working on recently, then I'd love to hear it. So feel free to reach out and get in touch. You can get in touch with me via my website, or you can get in touch via the Facebook group. If you're not a part of the Facebook group, Label Worthy, then make sure you head over there now. There'll be a link somewhere around this video for you to join that. It's full of amazing artists that are really supportive and that are putting out some awesome music and are really hustling to get their careers to the next level. There'll be more videos like this where we dive into different aspects of the production, like drums and guitars and things like that. So thanks for watching. Speak soon.
Run, stick a fork in me, I'm done, I wanna disappear. Nothing's impossible, they say.